If SGC closes in the next 2 years, will us collectors be left holding the bag? Dealers, collectors, and investors will debate that next.
I can't be buying fire like this all the time. I can't do it all the time, you know what I'm saying? I can't do it. You know, I gotta be responsible. I gotta keep the lights on in the house. But man, this is pretty. Man, so pretty.
But what was the advice I gave you kind of off camera?
Always ask them if they're flexible on the price.
Yes, and the way that you do it, the more nice that you are, right, the more that you give, the more you'll get back. So you did a great job.
Thank you.
All right.
I'm one of the backpack collectors. I always carry around a backpack at all the shows. And the backpack guys tend to be more vintage collectors. They don't really sell that many cards. I do sell cards, but granted, I don't go around the shows selling cards to dealers and stuff like that. They buy cards, they put in their backpack, and they call it a day.
So I titled the video, I suck at investing in cards, because I do. Unless you're just a ruthless investor who has no connection to the cards, to the hobby, to the people you're collecting, to the sport, to the teams or whatever, you're going to have biases that prevent you from making the best decisions.
Welcome to my new show, Dealers, Collectors, and Investors Debate. This is going to be a lot of fun. This is the first episode of 8, and it's gonna be about multiple different topics. It's not only going to be about grading, it's going to be about other topics in the hobby. But as you saw in the intro, I have 4 great content creators involved, and you're going to love to hear what they have to say about this topic. This first episode, I'm going to talk a little bit more than I normally would because some news came out recently about SGC. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a clip. John Newman was on Hobby Hotline this weekend, and he wanted to talk about the rumors of PSA poaching SGC's graders. So why don't we go to that clip right now?
Yeah. Well, there's a rumor, Dr. Jim, and again, I don't have this on any substantiated evidence, but there's a rumor that PSA plucked some of the more experienced veteran graders that worked for SGC and brought them over to PSA, which led to SGC having to move less experienced graders up into more premium positions and train and hire new graders. And so their grading floor had less manpower on it. I don't know if that's true or not true. I'm just saying that's been batted about as that's one reason.
So I wanted to show that clip first because John Newman has been plugged into SGC for a long time. He is a guy that's well known in the hobby first and foremost, but he also has a lot of connections at SGC because of the fact he was a bulk submitter. And he said he's going to continue to bulk submit, even though the recent news, SGC is no longer giving bulk submitters a discount, which I thought was huge news. I think a lot of people that that are in this hobby thought it was big news, because essentially what that means is, first and foremost, a lot of these bulk submitters have been very loyal and have brought in SGC a lot of business. So it was kind of like, hey, in the next 2 weeks, you're going to have to submit for full price like everybody else. So that was kind of not the greatest way to do it, in my opinion. And then the second part about it is it's gonna decrease SGC's volume, in my opinion. Obviously, it's a lot of people, they like the service that the bulk submitter provides, and this might sour them to using it and possibly sour them to even grading their cards. The next clip I want to show is a very, very important clip. It's kind of crazy coincidence that Leighton is one of the people on the panel for this show. This wasn't planned at all. It just happened that way. But Leighton interviewed on his 100th episode, and congratulations, Leighton. That's awesome. On his 100th episode of Sports Card Therapy, Leighton interviewed the CEO, Nat Turner of Collectors. And Leighton did ask the tough questions. So thank you, Leighton, for doing that. And I am going to show the full clip because I don't think it's fair to clip it. I'm going to show you the full clip of what Nat Turner said when Leighton asked about what was going on with PSA and SGC. Is it going to be closing soon? Let's see what Nat Turner had to say.
And SGC is here to stay?
Yeah, SGC's here to stay. We're not, killing that brand at all. We love SGC. I mean, especially for vintage, I would say. Like, I think, vintage collectors rightfully trust them almost as much as PSA when it comes to authentication and grading. What we have done is we have opened a PSA office in South Florida near them, actually like right next to them. There are employees at SGC that we've basically given an opportunity to train and work under the PSA brand. We actually, when we bought SGC, we talked about this. We said one of the primary reasons we were so interested in them is that we respect their grading team. And so there are certain grading team members that, are being asked or have volunteered to, help with our demand, which has been very high compared to our capacity. SGC, though, still gets plenty of cards. We have made some changes to their dealer program. We can't really keep up on the PSA side. So, it's been hey, how can we, get the best of both worlds here by getting some extra capacity through some of that team by training them on the PSA standard. So that's the SGC update.
All right. So now that you saw both clips, I want to break it down a little bit in my opinion, okay? So the reason why I showed you the first clip with John Newman was John Newman said that there were rumors that SGC has been getting graders taken away and sent to PSA. So my thought is, in the last year or so, and this is just me, this is not Leighton's opinion, this is not John's opinion, this is my opinion. My thoughts are, in the last year or so, basically PSA probably went down to Florida and said, hey, we want to take some of these graders up to New Jersey or California, and we need more graders. We just we have a capacity issue. And they tried to see who they could get to relocate, okay? And maybe a handful agreed to it, right? And then I think they reached a point where they said, okay, we still have a group of graders here in Florida that are unwilling to move, maybe because of family, they want to live in Florida. What else can we do? And this is my thoughts. They basically said, well, we could move in next door. Now the graders that say they don't want to leave Florida to go to New Jersey or California, they don't have an excuse anymore, right? So he said something specific here. He said, we are not killing SGC, right? We're not killing it. But we asked, one of the words was asked. We asked some of the graders, and we got some of the graders to volunteer to learn the PSA standards and to become PSA graders, right? We asked, and we also had volunteers, right? And the reason behind that is they said that obviously they're trying to keep up with PSA's demand, right? Here's my thought, okay? Recently, SGC has had higher lead times than normal. I think a lot of us have submitted grading orders to SGC, and it's taken over a month, right? And people looked at the numbers, and they said they're not getting more cards submitted. They're getting about the same amount of cards submitted, yet the lead time is longer. How is that possible? Well, back to John Newman's point. They took some graders. This is my thought, right? They took some graders from Florida and moved them to PSA. So now SGC had less graders. So the lead time on our orders increased, right? And now it's at 30 days, right? And now they're moving in next door, and they're going to take even more graders away from SGC, right? So what are the pillars of SGC that makes people love using them, right? I would say number 1, grading consistency. Number 2, fast turnaround times. And maybe number 3, the look of the cards, right? The look of the slabs. Well, number 1, the consistency of grading. What's that going to look like whenever you take the best graders out of SGC and send them to PSA? And what's been the big crack on PSA recently other than lead times? A lot of people don't like the consistency of their grading recently, right? So basically, if this is my thoughts, it feels like PSA is taking the graders that make SGC great out of there, moving them to PSA, right? So now grading consistency could be a concern for us with SGC moving forward, right? And number two, I said lead times. And do you think lead times are going to get better at SGC if they take experienced graders out of there? I'd say probably not, right? But how could PSA counteract that? If PSA is like, well, everybody's going to be mad because SGC has fast lead times. Now we're taking the graders out, so the lead times are even going to be worse. Oh, let's eliminate bulk submissions. If we eliminate bulk submissions, we're going to get less cards in at SGC. So maybe we can keep up with demand, right? So to be honest with you, the whole thing made me sick to my stomach. I'll be honest. Like, some people would watch that interview and say, oh, he said they're not killing the brand. We're good. This is awesome. When I watched that and I saw that they're taking the secret sauce out of SGC and moving it to PSA, I said, yeah, they're not traditionally killing SGC, but it feels like they're killing SGC in a different way, right? They're killing the reputation of the lead time. They're killing the reputation of the consistency of grading, and replacing it with brand new graders that we've never used before, right? This is just my thought, but man, that interview made me feel worse about the SGC situation, and I hope I'm wrong because I love using them. But like I said, normally this show will not have a long introduction by me and my thoughts on the situation. I just thought that this situation is so current, I wanted to bring it up. I will say this. In these 8 episodes, I love these topics and I love the debate of these topics. So my ask is, comment down below whose opinions you agree with out of the 4 people in the panel. I think it's a great conversation to have in the comment section. And if you're a content creator, feel free to make content around some of these 8 videos. I'd love to hear your opinion on these 8 videos and in the topics, okay? So you won't see me again. I'm going to get to the panel, and this should be a lot of fun. And the question I asked them is, if SGC closed in the next 2 years, what will happen to cards graded in SGC slabs? Okay? And I'm going to put that question down below as they give their answers also. So I appreciate it, guys. I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you on the next one.
Great question. First, I wanted to say that I did just interview Nat for my 100th episode of Trading Card Therapy. And I asked him about SGC point blank. And he said, SGC is not closing. That being said, we don't know exactly what will happen in the future. That was today or the other day when he said it. But if SGC closed within a couple of years, what do I think would happen to their cards? I don't think it's a simple answer. I think the best cards would be fine. I think that those cards that are, I don't know why I'm thinking of this, a 61 tops Koufax and a 4. That's maybe $80 in SGC and maybe 80 to 100 in PSA, or even maybe even they're closer. Maybe they're both 80 each. I could see that if SGC went by the wayside, it wouldn't happen immediately, but in 5 or 10 or 15 years, I could see that 61 tops Koufax in a 4 losing value in the SGC holder because people are not going to be completing sets utilizing SGC for their graded sets. So I think that in that case, you're going to see potentially a softening of some of those cards. But we'll use Koufax again. If you have a Sandy Koufax rookie in an SGC 8, which is a multi-$1,000 card, it's a great card. If it has strong eye appeal and it's a great example for the grade, no matter if SGC is around or not, they were respected for grading vintage. That card will still sell for strong money. But make no mistake, if SGC goes by the wayside, I think that people will take that high-end Koufax rookie in an 8 and they will try to cross it with PSA. So it's not so easy to say exactly what would happen, but I think using the example of Sandy Koufax, I try to do the best that I could to share with you what I think is going to happen, but it's really anyone's guess.
I think in the short term, nothing's going to happen in regards to the value. Because enough collectors today know how valuable SGC was, how reputable SGC was, how good of a company, the quality graders. There's enough people now to know that that was a good company. And, you know, business is business. PSA saw that they were putting a foothold into their world and swallowed them up. So I think in the short term, not a big deal. You know, short term could be anything, 5 years, 10 years. But as the hobby continues to proceed forward, as new collectors get into this space, this world, as investors come into this world, I think it will affect it. Maybe that's 10, 15 years from now, maybe 20. But man, I can remember off the top of my head grading companies of yesteryear, like GMA, or what was the one that had the customizable flips, HGA. You see those slabs, you laugh and smile, and you do get a nice little discount if the card is still in there. If the person who owns those cards hasn't cracked the slab yet, there is a discount purchasing those slabs. So yes, SGC in the short term, no effect, but in the long term, as you get new blood in the hobby, new investors in the hobby, new businesses in the hobby who have no idea about the history of the hobby and how good SGC was, they're gonna look at that thing like a GMA slab. And then, you know, you got your PSA cult following. You know, if they got OCD, they're gonna get those SGC slabs and just crack them and transfer them over, so there'll be less and less and less. Yeah, so short term, no. Long term, yes.
I think the easy answer is they're going to decrease. There's no way that these cards are going to increase in value. The only way that they would increase in value, and I'm going to put a caveat in here, is if PSA has some sort of program where you could take your SGC slab and it would go into PSA 1-to-1, or they would review it for a free or some sort of fee. But personally, I hope SGC does not close because I like their slabs over the PSA slabs. Also, I think SGC is a lot more accurate than PSA with grading, at least the vintage stuff that I have personally sent in. I can't say as much on the modern side of things because I don't grade as many modern cards, but I know a lot of people that send in modern prefer PSA over SGC. Regardless, on that side of things, I think we can point to another company that's defunct that has kind of elements of SGC, and that would be GAI. Now, in GAI, some slabs are decent, some slabs no one trusts. I believe it's the white label slabs when GAI rebooted, that there is a bunch of like trim cards, issues with those cards, so ignore those. The silver ones are good, but if you look at their values, they don't line up 1-to-1 with like an SGC or a CGC or a PSA. They often go for a lot less in auctions, although they were graded by professional graders at the time. And also, you know, it was a reputable company when GAI was produced. So again, I think if SGC does close down, if there's no sort of transition on how to get the SGC slabs into PSA, the clear answer is the value is going to decrease, right? It sucks, but that's it's going to happen. Also, I do want to add in, I think if PSA or collectors shuts down SGC and there's no transition plan to move those SGC slabs into PSA slabs, you're going to see a lot of issues arise throughout the hobby because there is just too much money in the SGC brand and ecosystem right now. And you're talking about like vintage cards that are graded SGC 10s or your Wagners or your Babe Ruth cards in the early 1900s, right? There's a lot of 6- and 7-figure cards that are in SGC slabs. So if they got rid of SGC overnight and there was no transition plan, the hobby will be very interesting. I will say that, at least for quite a while. What would happen? I don't know. I don't have that type of insight, especially when you talk about those big value cards. But there'd be some interesting stuff, I would assume, going on, especially in the age of social media.
I'm going to say we had a similar situation years ago. For people who remember, we had a company called GAI. And GAI was started by a former PSA grader who was well known, and people actually felt like he was, one of the best graders that existed at PSA. So they had a lot of let's say, a good reputation to start off. And towards the end, they ruined the reputation by basically doing some things, some shady things with holding cards, not returning cards, losing cards, and things like that, right? And there was just this reputation that was lost. So what I'm pointing at here is that as long as SGC, let's say they go bankrupt, or not bankrupt, but they go out of business in 2 years, like PSA pulls the plug, and you can only grade PSA cards from now on. Unless there's a scandal where we find out that SGC has been backdooring grades or doing something shady through all these years that makes their grading questionable, I don't think in the next 3 to 5 years after they go out there will be any issue. I do think there will be a hardcore community that still will buy and sell SGC cards. People will rally to that brand and keep it going, in the secondary market for quite a while. But over time, like we see with GAI and other dead grading companies, that those cards will start migrating towards other holders. And as those cards get put into PSA holders, I hate to say the word, but tag or someone else that comes along, the SGC brand will diminish over time. And then pretty soon, any card that can be flipped into a similar holder for a similar grade, those cards will all be flipped because you can make money doing that. They're more relevant to modern collectors, and you'll see a diminishing of the brand over time to the point to where only collectors who are, let's say, older will really understand the value of the SGC brand and really be into it. But for the majority of the modern collectors, the SGC brand will just basically be something that was kind of a footnote, and they'll be like, oh, well, they graded a bunch of old cards, but all the new stuff has already been cleaned out of there in different holders now. And that's sort of the pattern for GAI. And I feel like that would happen to SGC to some extent. I do think there will be a lot of people who hold on to the vintage GAI holders forever. Those cards won't really flip as much as the modern stuff. But, I think if people can make money flipping holders, they will. And I think that'll eventually erode that brand to where you won't see that many cards in SGC holders, in that 20 years past the downfall. So that's my opinion. And I think, again, we had a little bit of a precedent with GAI. So